Real talk, baby, it's free. You ain't gotta pay for what's real. The bullshit that's been taught, it's not real. That you believe so much in. Which is the bullshit. Let's go see if we can go deliver this package,
yeah, these motherfuckers, they run these corner stores, man. Everyone that coming up, I don't care if it's Circle K or whatever it is, them motherfuckers, they running them, man. They up in them motherfuckers. They up in them. You gonna see an Indian motherfucker that's running that bitch. Yeah, Middle Eastern. Already no such thing as Middle East. This is some bullshit. Oh, these Africans. You don't want to know the truth. You can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And that shit started to get significance to it now. You hear me?
That's the truth. Black people, we can't win no race wars.
They can't win the race war, boy. And they can't handle that. They can't handle that truth, dog. They can't handle that truth, bro. We cannot fight them people.
They got way more resources.
Way more resources, bro.
Way more.
And they've been stockpiling longer.
They can live off the grid longer.
And they've been stockpiling longer, dog. They've been stockpiling.
You can't beat them motherfuckers. They got you in your ass, man.
And the true part about it now, it ain't just the black people. Now it's all people now.
All right, man. Well, yeah, shit. Medicine can't slip past your feet.
Oh, you know that.
Biggest operation of the entire war. All right, fellas. This is our chance to break out of Normandy. Won't be easy. Focus on your men. That's what'll get you through. If we get this envoy across, we're in the heartland.
We thought we knew what war would be like. Rebecca Ruff, establishing herself as a foremost expert on 9/11. That combines about 30 years of her career as an international flight attendant and purser. Rebecca has been able to bring into light what really occurred on that fateful day. Welcome to the program, Rebecca.
Well, thank you so much, George. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So tell me a little bit more about yourself other than what we just had.
Well, I had flown around 30 years. At the time of 9/11, I stopped flying in 2004. I really didn't pay much attention to 9/11, what happened. It really changed the career so much. So those last 3 years were not easy for us. But I could have been on one of those jets that went sideways there on 9/11. I missed it by about 8 to 10 hours. I commuted from coast to coast. And I just
Okay, you're using a quick little havoc heli to make multiple drops here. Yeah, it looks like we've got a nervous buyer. I mean, what?
For a living, it's impossible to look at it in depth. We always knew that jets would scramble within 6 minutes if we needed them. And on that day, we saw NORAD didn't scramble jets for over an hour and a half. I knew that the government and our military was going to be there should we need them. So after I retired, a BBC article popped up dated September 23rd, 2001, right after 9/11, and it told that the Saudi government was threatening to sue the FBI and the U.S. government for claiming that 6 of its citizens were the alleged hijackers, and they, in fact, were still alive. And I was like, what? And at that moment, I guess it was my time. God said, it's time to wake up, lady. And I started doing thousands of hours of research.
The Creator said it's time to wake up, lady. God is the one that had you asleep.
Protocols and hijackings and any evacuation or any emergency command.
So y'all realize that the God that y'all believe in is man motherfucking made. The Creator made that motherfucking man to be so fucking smart to the point where he's stupid.
And I knew their commands. It was pretty universal what we
took the woman's position of being first, because we was only created to be a motherfucking dick. A conscious dick with sprints for the queen bee, the only creator here on earth consciously thinking we're nothing but donators to that creator, but we're supposed to be a father to that seed for direction, for balance. Look at the fucking balance of these so-called men. That's unbalanced for a man to think that he's a woman. For a man to want to be a woman. That's some fucking
that's
bullshit.
Probably what would have happened if the scenario we were led to believe really did happen on 9/11. The aircraft on 9/11 were taken over remotely using what's called the flight termination system, and it's a remote control device that was sold to some U.S. carriers. It's a plug-in to Boeing's onboard computer. It's a plug-in device. I tell people it's almost as simple as a USB plug-in to your computer. Very simple. You don't have to rearrange your computer. But it was sold to some commercial airlines in the event, listen carefully to this, in the event that a hijacker were to get into the cockpit and take control of the aircraft, I don't know who we are, but I think I have an idea now, we can take control and remotely land that aircraft anywhere that we can get.
And there's nothing the hijacker could do.
That's correct. And there was nothing that the pilots could do.
Do you hear this, people?
So you think
real talk, real time, real fucking truth coming from the divine. Motherfuckers that know shit
would they know
was happening.
That somebody was guiding this
it's me, Mr. Glass, the truth period. Fuck all the
bullshit. In the event that a hijacker took control, they would never in a million years have dreamed that device was actually controlling their aircraft. They would have just thought they were having some sort of mechanical. And the interesting thing about the flight termination system, and one of the reasons why a lot of the pilots and the Airline Pilots Association, their union, did not want this thing put on, is that once the flight termination system takes over via the transponder frequency, and so air traffic control loses track of you, you're no longer showing your transponder on their radar, and you lose all communication. You can't even communicate with the flight attendants in the cabin. And we are the eyes and the ears of the pilot. Because they have a cockpit door between us, them in the cabin. They don't know what's going on back there. The information that I discovered was literally so mind-blowing for me. It made me physically sick when I really figured out what had happened and how it happened and who did it and how it was covered up. I wanted to take all the information that I discovered in these thousands of hours of research I did into the entire event, not just the airplane.
Okay, enemy agents have infiltrated the homeless community. They've got an arms cache in Tent City. Get in there, get the guns out, we're all happy.
And all of those things. I only knew about the crashes and the hijackers. And write a book so that it would help wake people up to what has happened to us. Because 9/11 isn't our past, it's our future.
All right, well, let's talk about what we were told, first of all. 4 planes taken over by 19 Middle Eastern terrorists who had been training and flying at schools, flight schools. Are you saying that none of that occurred, or that part of it occurred? What's your overall view?
Well, what I discovered is, like I said, the first thing I discovered that 6 of those hijackers were a Saudi Arabian citizens, and the Saudi government was suing the FBI. Not only were they using their names, but they were using photographs from their passports and their IDs.
Of people who were not on that plane.
That's correct. Those people have never, one of them had never been to the United States, and he didn't know what a Pennsylvania was. He was supposed to be on Flight 93, but nothing changed.
All right, where are those 6 now? I mean, why wouldn't, see, you know, if somebody had a picture of me as a terrorist taking a plane, and they used it in Britain or the Middle East, and I'm here, believe me, you're going to know that I'm here.
Right. Well, the Saudi government stood up for its citizens and was threatening to sue, and I never could find a settlement, but I'm sure there must have been one.
Yep,
because
they had me one.
and that was one of the things that really
Had me
my
one.
research is that the FBI was being sued, these people were still alive, and 4 of them are pilots for Saudi Air. Being an airline professional for 30 years, I thought, whoa, can you imagine trying to travel as a pilot or flight attendant and being accused of being a terrorist for the new Pearl Harbor?
No, it's not going to happen. But I mean, why haven't these 6, though, come forward to say, hello, here I am?
Well, they did. And as a matter of fact, you know, that's part of that BBC article, and their government sued. And what we were never told as Americans through our media and through the government handing out information to the media, that this lawsuit was either settled out of court or that these people really were alive. The FBI did eventually say that, well, there could be some mistaken identity there. Maybe it's a stolen ID, but they never reneged on it. If you look on Wikipedia, those 4 or 6 citizens that are still alive, 6 of them, 4 of them are professional pilots. They are still considered to be one of the 19 hijackers.
Okay.
Never changed their story.
All right, then the official version 5, 5, 5, and 4 of those 4 planes, they took control of the plane. They, slit throats with some people with their box cutters. They somehow got their way into the cockpits. They all somehow got to fly the planes. I still think the one in Pennsylvania was shot down on us. So what do you think happened on that plane? Give me your thoughts.
Well, one of the things I kept reverting back to was the FAA protocols and what the flight attendants should have said and done, and what they did and what they didn't do, and just lining up with those protocols. One of the things that was the protocol, the FAA hijacking protocol at the time of 9/11, was called the Common Strategy, and basically that strategy was to delay, and prevent the hijacker from getting into the cockpit, and that meant delay any way we could. And there were many ways for us to try, and that was put out there for us in our yearly training. And one of the things you wouldn't want to do with a hijacker, a real hijacker on board, would be sit on the telephone for a half an hour. And on Flight 11, we had 2 flight attendants talking on the phone for 27 minutes.
Wow.
And the things that they said were what really woke me up. One of the things that the flight crew should have done was to sit down and to not draw attention to themselves. And what these first 2 did on the first flight, Flight 11, is they sat on the phone for about a half an hour, 27 minutes, both of them.
How do we know that?
Well, because it's well documented. One of them called a supervisor in Boston, and the other one called reservations. And so the reservation agent and the security official from American Airlines documented that. Only 4 minutes of her call was taped to the reservations agent. Something went wrong with their system. The other gal, a lot of her stuff, and she was actually talking to a supervisor with a personal friend, so that's how they know that it was 27-minute phone calls. And they both called in at the same time. And like I said, if you had a real hijacker on board the aircraft, that would be the last thing you would want to be caught with, is a phone, a cell phone, any kind of airphone, anything to your ear, because he would think that you were ratting on him and telling the people on the ground who he was.
Sure.
Only his plan. So making a phone call for half an hour was a huge red flag. Not only did they not ever tell the most important bit of advice that day, if they had called someone on the ground, would have been how that person got into the cockpit. And that's the only thing they should have been saying, and they never did say that. So these are the things that I looked at real closely. So here we have on that very first flight, 2 flight attendants call in. At the same time, they call in about 20 minutes after takeoff from Boston.
Well, let me ask you this first of all. Is it unusual for flight attendants on a plane to be making phone calls?
Very. Okay. First off, the cell phones don't work at altitude, and second off, those airphones are all gone now because they were horrible. You could only use one in first class and maybe one in coach at the same time. They were very, very bad quality, and they were expensive. So, that's the whole thing. The phone call thing is just really crazy. But, according to the government story, they were mostly all calls from cell phones at altitude. So
and you can't get
now, 20 minutes after Boston,
can't catch the cell tower.
Probably close to 30,000 feet, depending upon the traffic pulling out of Boston. And this flight attendant, Betty Ong, they both call in at about the same time as well. And she says, this is the stuff that I could not believe. Now, I got most of this stuff from an FBI written document, transcript of what she said. And she said that he, as the hijacker was one hijacker, and he was a he had sprayed pepper spray or mace in business class, and we can't breathe in business class. Well, I've been on planes over this last 30 years where some real cheap perfume was sprayed in one cabin, and guess what?
All right, then. That'll keep him busy on the floor.
Complained about it, right? And so I knew that, and I knew that, she's sitting on the phone for 27 minutes, and she never complained to anyone she was talking to about suffering the effects of mace or pepper spray.
No.
She never coughed. She never complained about having a hard time breathing or anything like that. And let me just say this, because this is kind of earth-shattering. Most people don't think about this, and partly because they just don't have the experience I have with that cheap perfume. If you sprayed pepper spray or mace in a pressurized cabin, everyone would be feeling the effects of it.
When I hear arms are moving around the state at the behest of hostile governments, it upsets me, okay? You're going to get in a buggy, bring down these shipments, and collect cargo. And I'm going to make some tea.
They said they only had trouble breathing in business class, and that's not real.
All right, so what does that mean if it was no longer pressurized?
That means it was on the ground somewhere.
Already?
20 minutes from Boston. And then she said something else that really got me, and this is when I told my husband, oh my God, this is a message for a flight attendant, because only a flight attendant could hear this. She said, he, as in that one hijacker male,
Hello, Pegasus Lifestyle Management. How can I help you?
767. There's only stairs in a 747. And I immediately knew she was in a hangar.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Got the chills yet?
Wow.
I'm getting...
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Your spectacular aircraft is now ready for you at our nearest airfield.
Yes, indeed. Flight 11 was the first of the 4 aircraft. And then I realized that was starting to look like she had been told what to say and what was going to happen that day by someone.
All right. Go ahead.
She kept trying to convince the people that she was talking to reservations. She said, we're up in the air. And she said that a few times, we're up in the air. Well, saying you're up in the air in a hijacking is kind of like saying when you were carjacked, well, I was in my car. Because, of course, your hijacking only takes place in the air. If somebody tried that on the ground, we'd blow those chutes and get you out of the airplane. And so I thought, well, why would she say they're in the air? It's a hijacking. That doesn't make sense.
She was telling where she was
And
at.
she went on to say that she was seated at her jump seat at 3R, which is the very tail section of the 767. The other flight attendant on the phone at the same time was giving completely conflicting information.
So, the version that we have, of course, you know, the couple of those planes hit the World Trade Center. Are you saying that, well, obviously something hit the World Trade Center and we're pretty sure they were planes? Are you saying they were not those planes?
That would be correct. And how I dissected this and deconstructed this was through all of the phone calls made on all four flights and the similarities of what they were being told to say. And then I charted, here's my devil's tower in the living room. I charted what the NTSB, what the FAA said the aircraft were doing. Now, according to the official story on Flight 93, the aircraft was coming down at more than a 40-degree angle, and part of that time upside down, while those left roll guys were bringing hot water into the cockpit. Impossible in a 757.
What planes hit the tower?
What we saw hitting the South Tower looks like the 767, but it's actually a little bit out of sizing for the 200 series that it was supposed to be. And there's some kind of pod formations underneath it. There's some oddities that pilots are telling me that they do. And they want to know how in the world, have I figured this out? No, I haven't. How in the world did they get that aluminum plane? Because we've seen hail strikes leaving, Chicago and Detroit. So you get baseball hail that will just rip a plane apart, and you can have serious problems. Or a bird strike. I mean, literally, it goes to make a hole right in the aircraft. How could you get an aluminum plane to fly through a cement and steel building like that? Airline professionals cannot grasp that. And that's the thing that I saw. I thought it was cryptography that morning. I could not. I just can't. I still to this day I can watch that video over and over. I can't understand how they did that. Let me kind of continue a little bit with the other flight attendant on that first flight that sat on the phone for such a long time. She did something else that raised a red flag for me as a flight attendant and a professional. She did something that was a mistake that no flight attendant would ever make. And she called into the supervisor and claimed that the hijacker was seated at 9 feet. And then she told them to be later. But first off, you would never ever call and say that the hijacker was coming unless you were 100% sure. And here's why. In that common strategy tactic, the FAA protocol, our job was to delay them getting into the cockpit, right? And then the whole plan was to land that aircraft. And if it had the flight termination system, somebody could be doing that remotely for us. I didn't work for an airline that has that. So
let me ask you something. Would a pilot open up the cockpit door if they were told that hijackers were systematically killing people on the plane until they opened up that door?
No.
They would not.
No. The only thing that's really important to us as professionals, and this is pilots, flight attendants, pursers, all of us, when we put our uniform on, air safety as passengers and the safety of that aircraft are our number one concern. And so his number one concern would be to land that airplane, get a SWAT team, and if somebody died back there, it's not going to be all of them.
Right, and there's no way 20 minutes into that flight, the crew members would have opened up the door, gone to the bathroom. I don't see that happen. That happens later on. Later on, I've seen that happen on a plane, but not right away.
Yeah, exactly. And so as I started looking at it, I thought, well, first off, if I called in and said 9B was the hijacker, and then I didn't get a chance to change that story, and we landed, the SWAT team takes over, or the Army Rangers come in, and they'll take that guy down. It's a mistake you just wouldn't make as a flight attendant. And so I, for some reason, one day while I was doing all this research, I thought, well, gosh, I wonder who they said was this hijacker, 9B. And so I started to look, and unbelievable, the guy was a trained assassin. He was also an anti-hijacking specialist and a hostage rescue specialist. He was from a foreign intelligence agency. He was fluent in English. He grew up in Denver, Colorado. He was fluent in Hebrew and Arabic. He grew up in Denver until he was 14, moved to Israel, and then he learned Hebrew and Arabic while he was there. And so I'm like, well, that's really interesting. And then when the flight attendant
what a
called
coincidence.
back to her supervisor, she said, oh, no, I made a mistake. The hijacker was in 9B, and, 10B, and not 9B. 9B's been stabbed by the box cutter, right? Mm-hmm. So here you've got this guy who is a trained anti-hijacking specialist, a highly trained assassin, a hostage rescue specialist, who is fluent in the language being spoken by the hijackers who are planning the new...
Well done. Now the real work can get started in the lab.
And for no reason, there's no apparent reason, they decide to get up and stab him with a box cutter and kill him. Because we're led to believe that he died. He was stabbed by a box cutter.
And how did they systematically know it was him?
Thank you.
There's no answer to that one. And he was involved in the Israeli Special Intelligence Operations referred to as Sayeret Matkal. These are the trained assassins, and they do the anti-hijacking and hostage rescue. So these would be the specialists that Israel would send to a hijacking, and like in Tunisia or someplace, they go rescue their...
Okay, these buyers...
They have actually been used. Benjamin Netanyahu's brother, and Benjamin Netanyahu was Sayeret Matkal, and his brother was actually killed in a hostage rescue attempt quite a while ago. Isn't that really interesting that we have this guy who is listening to these people speak Arabic and plan to take over the aircraft, and for no reason they get up and kill him, yet this guy, 9B's friends, said about him he could kill any human being using a pen and a credit card. Let's just move on from him because there is a lot, and there's a lot in the book about him. And so it's really interesting to me that the flight attendants were saying, one was saying a doctor and a nurse were taking care of 9B after she said he was stabbed. And the other flight attendant, same flight, was saying there was no medical people on board. And so I'm saying, well, okay, there's only one reality inside an aircraft cabin. So I like watching all this stuff and reading through, and I just took massive notes and drew all these charts of what the government said the aircraft was doing. Some of the aircraft were coming out of the sky. I know you've flown, and I know you know what this means. 6,000 to 10,000 feet per minute. And you're expected to believe that someone's sitting on the phone showing no emotion, no fear, and that would be a very frightening thing. That is beyond if you were to do emergency descent or decompression. You would be pushing so that coming down like that. I mean, the aircraft makes very scary noise. People are scared. People scream, and none of that's going on.
So let me ask you this: are you saying that the so-called hijackers, whether it was taken over electronically or not, are you saying they were not or they were on the planes?
The 19 hijackers that you are led to believe, I've actually found 10 of them alive. The other 9, they're fake people with a first name from somebody's ID and a last name from someone else's. So there were not Arab hijackers on any of the real passenger manifests. Another thing that's interesting about what the FBI claimed were the passenger manifests in that first 72 hours, they came up with 4 different names that are not, there were 19, but 4 of them were different than what they are right now and what they've been ever since about 3 or 4 days into this event. And it's interesting because 3 of those people showed up alive. One of them was an FAA employee. And he said no, and he was actually an FAA aviation safety employee in Florida. And so he, of course, went to the FAA and then went to the FBI and said, I'm not a hijacker. How could I be on the manifest? I was at work, and my brother, who you claim was also on the manifest, has been dead for a year. And the other 2 guys showed up alive, too. So quickly, we were unfurling our flags and figuring out who were we going to point our guns at and kill over this attack. The FBI quickly changed their story. And the actual story about Mohammed Atta's rental car with the Koran and the flight manuals and his will was actually assigned to the brother, the FAA employee, and his dead brother.
And I've got to tell you, too, Rebecca, of anything that I heard, finding a passport of one of these...
Yeah, that was the shit. That was the shit. That was the shit.
Was the most bizarre.
That was the shit, yo. That was the shit. We had to be stupid fucking fools to believe that shit, and we did. We believe that shit because the news said it was true. The fucking government said it was true. Our fucking president said it was true. Now you see that every last one of these motherfucking presidents ain't no motherfucking good, so how can they be good fucking men to be talking about from fucking history? The history should be fucking history because it's his fucking store fucking read, and it's a lie.
When I actually flew out of Boston for a while, I knew that the phone calls had to have been made on the ground.
On one of the flights from Boston, going to LA that hit the towers, my uncle from my mother's marriage, he's still gone. So I want you to tell me where he is. Where is he? Everybody else that happened to be on those other planes.
Well, you know what I did to discover this is I kind of dissected as I've been doing these phone calls.
They let them get them with the new identity, just like they did the motherfuckers that supposed to have blowed up in the motherfucking Atlantic.
People making those phone calls had been told about what was going to happen that day. And I'm sorry for your loss for your uncle, and I'm sure that he was more than likely an innocent passenger, much like the crew members, and they are all dead. They just didn't die the way the illusion was painted.
Yep, they did. I know they couldn't keep them very quiet.
Truly, George, it made me physically ill when I discovered this. I took these phone calls and the details that were being made, and I realized that there was someone on board that was handling these people and telling them what to say. On the second flight out of Boston, Flight 175, United Airlines, there was a young gentleman that took the turn, and he called his father, and he said that an airline hostess had been sent. And now, I'm in my 60s. I started flying in the early 70s. And we have never been called airline hostess. That's a terminology that's used in Asia, maybe the Middle East, but it is not something we have been called. We stewardess until 1968, and then we've been called flight attendants. So this guy was 32. His entire life he's heard us called stewardess or flight attendant. And so I thought, well, that's a really weird thing to say because that's not American terminology. And so then he did something else that was very strange. At exactly 9 o'clock, keep this in mind, this is now 3 minutes prior to impact in the South Tower. On that flight, he calls his father back for the second time, and he tells his dad he thinks the hijackers are going to fly their plane to Chicago and fly them into a building. Now, before 9/11, nobody in their right mind would have ever dreamed up that scenario, and it told me that someone had told him what the drill was to be. And this is what I think was happening. The handlers on board told the crew members and the passengers, did you know that there were almost a dozen war games going on that morning?
Yes, I knew.
So they were told, and I can't even tell you how many American United crew members have contacted me. And because we would fight to the death to keep you passengers safe, we have deduced that the handlers on board had to have explained to them they landed at this place remotely using this remote control as testing the system, and that it was part of the war game drill or drilling air traffic control or FAA or some kind of story like that. Each aircraft had 2 people removed from it to make the phone calls. And they were put in a hangar, in an office, and they were in different offices. That's why the people making the phone calls didn't know what the other ones were saying. Like the flight attendants on Flight 11 giving completely conflicting reports about a passenger being tended to by a doctor and a nurse or being tended to by no one. Now, there was another guy that called out, and this is really interesting. This guy was a Top Gun fighter pilot trained at Miramar, California, in San Diego. 6'2", 225 pounds. He fought in the Gulf War in 91. And at 9 o'clock, 3 minutes prior to impact, if you've ever flown into Manhattan, you know that New York is about 365 square miles. So 3 minutes before you're hitting the South Tower, you know you're in New York, right? And so he called his mom, and he told his mom they were hijacked. He didn't say much about the hijackers or anything else. Didn't look good, thought he wasn't going to make it. And then she said, well, where are you? And he said, well, I think we're over Ohio. Well, Ohio is an hour and 45 to an hour and 55 minutes from Boston. He's a pilot. You should know that. And when you look out the window and you see Manhattan, you know you're not in Ohio or Kansas. And so I thought, well, that's an on-call thing. And then he says the one thing that was my aha moment. He said 8 minutes after the passengers figured out they'd been hijacked, 8 minutes. Well, he says to his mom, a bunch of us passengers think we're going to go take over the cockpit. That's the scenario for Flight 93 left.
They were telling they was script. They was reading from a script.
Or plan scenario. Because there's no way.
They were reading from a script. Oh, they did some TV shit on us, people. They did some TV shit on us. They did some TV shit on us, people.
Pennsylvania. If you're saying it did not, but something did, what was that?
Boy, it's hard to say. You know, there was the ditch that they showed, that divot in the ground has been found on Google Earth Maps from 96. So the local people, even the local coroner, said there was no bodies. And in any plane crash, and the listeners, I invite you to just do a Google image search on any kind of plane crash, 757 plane crash, or just commercial plane crash, and the Google images, and you're going to see huge sections of fuselage, especially in aircraft that large, with the 757. And because that's like an old 707, it's missing a couple of pieces. Similar in size, it's a big aircraft. The tail is huge, and so there are parts of an aircraft crash that just don't disappear. That was the one thing I looked at that day and I said, that was not a plane crash.
I've seen the pictures. It looks like there's nothing there except for a hole in the ground. Basically, that's right. The only thing you could see from where we were was a big gouge in the earth and some broken trees. We could see some people walking around in the area, but from where we could see, there wasn't much left. Any large pieces of debris at all? No, there was nothing that you could distinguish with a plane that crashed there.
That's really all you see is a large crater in the ground and just tiny bits of debris there. So we'll film report that the investigators out there, and there are hundreds of them as I said tonight, have found nothing larger than that.
Well, we've got the controversy about the plane that reportedly hit the Pentagon as well. They can't find bodies too much of the plane. Now, there was something that looked like it could have been an engine, but
they put that shit
too remains controversial. So let's make an assumption, Rebecca, that these 4 planes were taken and landed somewhere within a region of where Boston is. Again, you're saying they did what with the planes afterward? I mean, where are they now? And then those passengers, are you saying all the passengers aboard those planes were killed after the plane landed?
Yep.
Yes. More than likely. Here's another thing that people always ask, we're so light. There were 30 people on one 757. That's nothing. It holds 180 passengers. And it was a coast-to-coast flight. So a lot of people have said, how come there weren't very many people on board? Well, I think that this was such a methodically planned out illusion that I think that some reservation phone lines were hijacked. And so that they were limited how many people. If they had been full aircraft, there would have been over 800 people to handle. But since the loads were light, then it was easy for them to put them all in the back section in one area where they could make them do whatever they wanted and keep an eye on everybody, make sure phone calls weren't. Because on Flight 11, nearly 100 people, I think there were 90-some people or something with it, and the entire crew members, it was the 11 crew members and 86 passengers or something like that, and yet only 2 flight attendants, those 2 flight attendants made a phone call, and they were on the phone for 27 minutes. So you got to ask yourself, why didn't anybody else make a phone call? Well, this is what we think, and I've gotten my head together with a bunch of airline people that actually knew the crew members, the cockpit crew and the flight attendants on those airlines, and knew them personally, and they're dead too as well. They really did exist. The flights did operate. There were people on board, and yes, in fact, they were killed. They were just killed in a different manner than what they showed us on television. And so what we think is that each plane, and until you get to Flight 93, each aircraft had 2 people removed from it, put in offices upstairs in that hangar, and then they made their phone calls. Each one had two people making those phone calls.
And these people did not know what was going to happen.
They couldn't have, or the crew members would have fought back. I know that. And so I think that they were told by handlers that this is a drill, and they were removed those people off, those two people to make the phone calls. On Flight 83, they actually took 11 people off. There were 33 passengers or so. And I think there was 7 crew members total, with pilots and flight attendants. And once those people were removed, we are under the belief that more than likely, you know, how predictive program and the Illuminati like to tell you what they're doing. Well, one of the things that everybody said that called out almost every phone call said they sprayed pepper spray or mace in the cabin. So we believe that some type of gas, perhaps those hydrogen cyanide or some quick-acting gas, was in there, and they shut the door. And those airplanes are sealed tight. And that type of gas, some type of gas like that, would, before people could really react and open the door or anything, they would be affected by that.
Why would they go through, and then we're going to get into who they may be, but why would they go through this exercise of landing the planes, taking the passengers, killing them, and then send other planes into the exact spots that these other planes might have gone? Why not just let these original planes crash into the Twin Towers, into the Pentagon, and the one that crashed in the field of Pennsylvania? Why not just let it happen like that?
It wouldn't have hit where they wanted to hit it.
I think that's a...
Think about it. In order for the $20 bill to make sense, the plane had to hit into the Twin Towers at a certain angle, at a certain place. So, like, I know what the truth is, and the ones that don't know what the truth is don't really care about what the truth is, because they're too afraid to die with telling the truth. I'm just saying.
Kind of a common question I actually get asked, and I think that
They seem to duplicate.
yeah, well, this was a sure thing. They actually could handle this as a sure thing. And what hit the North Tower was more than likely some type of drone aircraft. We really don't know what hit that, and it could have been some military thing.
Well, and we have our questions of, you know, why those buildings went down the way they did. Many people that I've interviewed believe it's controlled demolition.
Looked like it, didn't it?
Well, sure did. You've seen enough buildings go down.
So to answer your question, why would they go through this? One, they needed the precision, and they couldn't take the chance that the pilots might override that flight termination system and take control of the aircraft.
At what point, though, is this speculative or something based on some fact? I mean, we really don't know that they were all pulled off the plane before, do we?
Well, I don't think they were killed off the plane. I think they were gassed in the cabin.
All of them.
All of them. Except for the handlers that got off.
The handlers and the pilots.
Because all of the crew members, I mean, I have the United and American Airlines pilots buying the books from the publisher in bulk, because they get them for about $11 a piece and handing them out. They are so convinced this is exactly what happened. And as I continue going through this, as we continue talking some more, I'm going to tell you some of the things. Remember I mentioned to you the Brady bonds and the gold and all those things that I discovered?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the evidence for WorldCom, Global Crossing, and the Enron investigations were all being held in Building 7. That one fell down at 5:20 in the afternoon.
Do have my questions on why that went down. It was really never hit by anything.
Exactly. And you saw that as a controlled demolition. I saw that too, and I thought, wow, how did they get that thing wired to demolition? I didn't think it just fell on its own. And then, of course, I didn't pay much attention to it. But after I looked into it, it definitely was.
Well, I will give you that there are huge inconsistencies with the 9/11 Commission's report and what we think happened. Huge discrepancies. And things happen, the Patriot Act, and very bizarre things have gone on since, and they haven't stopped.
You're answering your own question. Why would they do this? well, look at the wars we've had in the last 14 years. Look at what we're doing.
See, what I believe happened was that some people in government knew this was coming and didn't do anything about it. That they had that ability to stop this, to stop them all. But they said, no, let's let it happen for the things we're seeing unfold today. And that they let it happen. They let these 19 crazed terrorists get on board. They how they took over the planes, I don't know.
They're still alive, so you have to deal with that.
I'll give you the whole thing's bizarre, but for me, what makes it stranger is the fact that, you say the planes were taken and then the people were gassed.
Well, when I first discovered this, George, it physically made me sick. I missed it myself by not 10 hours. There could have been me on one of those planes. And to learn what I learned, and I'm not even done telling you everything I learned. I took all the information that I uncovered over, probably 3 years of investigating 20 hours a day. I lived in this until I dissected it. Methodically dissected their illusion. That's the title of my book, Methodical Illusion, and that's what I did. I methodically went through every word that was said on the phone calls, why the protocols for hijacking weren't followed by anyone, what I would have done as a flight attendant. And the amazing thing to me is, I think my biggest fear once I discovered this was the flight attendants and the pilots, the airline people were going to hate what I found but then I thought, well, it's not any worse than watching those people jump out of the towers or thinking that you're strapped in a seat and go into a building. It probably was a much more gentle death. A death is a death. And so, no, just the opposite has happened to me. I have had the most incredible response from airlines, even especially United and American people, that have said, you have figured this out, this is exactly what happened, how they did it. And you see, because I haven't told you this part yet, there were 2 companies involved in the FAA headquarters that were able to manipulate, that were actually there for the war game, making things appear that were not real on radar for those fighter jets that were playing the war game, set for the NORAD screen, radar screen readers.
But what's the significance of that?
Well, they were able to make things appear and disappear. So once that flight termination system took over the transponder and the transponder turned off, the air traffic controllers couldn't see them, they have the ability to create fake flight plans and have those planes go anywhere they wanted to.
What's the bottom line? What did they want to accomplish after they did this?
I think it was, what's considered a false flag. I mean, you have the Project for New American Century, PNAC it's referred to, and you can Google search this on Wikipedia, it explains it really well. There were a group of people that actually planned, and they said in this plan, the necessity to get the American people behind these 7 wars coming in the Middle East. A new Pearl Harbor were the words they used in the Project for the New American Century. And you can look back now. Hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it, George?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is.
Yeah, and so when we look back, and I think what's happening, and instead of the people, I thought people would be angry at this, what I discovered, I mean, I have not had anybody try to even attempt to refute this, especially airline people. They're just on board. It's just, you figure this out, this is exactly what happened. And these are their coworkers, and especially because most of these people are coming from American and United. It was very difficult for me. I truly was physically ill. I couldn't write. I couldn't even think or eat for a while once I discovered what I did, because it was very tough, and I was so close to being there. So what I found are these companies that were able to manipulate the radar. They showed us what they wanted on radar. I just got a Facebook from someone that said to me they knew Betty Ong and flown with her, and she would never have stayed on the airplane 20 minutes, and that she was an excellent flight attendant and followed all the rules. So, that's the kind of support I get. And
what you have, my friend? What you have with you? You already know my girl in there chilling by herself. Oh, man. Y'all kicked me out the other day, and I couldn't come back and join y'all no more, y'all motherfuckers, but it's all good. Nigga, like I said again, hey, nigga, I know it wasn't you. It had to be somebody else that was in the session with you, but even though y'all was on the same thing, when I tried to come back through you, it said that you was part of the kick.
I was part of the what not the kick.
You was part of the kick that kicked me out of that session. I know it, but it, like say for instance, they was working for you. You see what I'm saying?
Remember the other day I told you I got kicked out of the lobby when I tried to join your lobby back.
They wouldn't let you.
They wouldn't let me because they told me I'd been kicked.
Right. So like I said again, the people that was probably in the session, they was in the same mission. See, I was just in the game, and you know I'm always just watching TV. So by me not being participating, they did that. Yeah. They did kick me though. They still kick me.
Merriweather, because security is a
Hey,
private
it's all
matter.
good though.
What can I do for you?
Shooting. I'm about to tell you, you have to
A
start
helicopter
shooting.
will be with you shortly.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Yeah, I already know you'll kill him. That's what I'm saying. Shit, that's what this bitch get paid for. Now let's go to the roof. Yeah, they gonna kill everybody. Let's all take our time. See, that's what she's like. Right now, I'm running with you just to be running. No, not be walking through everything.
We got you covered.
Like I said again, I don't have to lose no weight because the time is about the money anyway. See? Shit. So I'm trying to tell you that I do the damn thing when I make my mission look like a movie. Because how bad of a nigga is he in the session by himself and he walking in the session doing missions? All because nobody don't want to come in the session and fuck with him. Nah, the helicopter's gonna be up there, gonna handle business by the time we get up there. Helicopter's gonna be up there taking care of them. You hear them shooting? See? When we get up there, they ain't have nobody left. Or you can have you some fun and kill some people. We ain't give him a chance. See, like I said, I know to be walking and doing stuff like this here. Look,
our job here is done. Moving out.
I hide by the wall, and they'll kill him. And then I come. Easy money, baby. Easy money, baby. Like I said, all that fighting and shit, and you don't really have to. Shit, you got motherfuckers that fight for you. Oh, yeah, they get. What happened? I seen it too. Same time. And y'all both died at the same time. Hey, don't make talk, dog. It's like I said, dog. All right, like I said again, nigga, I'm just chilling. Look like a 16 and jumped in. A 16 and jumped in there, but it's easy to get him out there. All right, 1-1. I just seen that thing. Throwing me a mission right there. It's full. We tell you it's gonna sail.
those are the people to me that are important. And, that's who I dedicated myself to find the planes, the passengers, and the crew, because that was my world. That was my life. And I realized this, George, that those phone calls, they had to have been made. They had to have been made so we knew who to shoot, who to aim our guns at, who to unfurl our flags and attack, and who to support. So what wars and the terminology that they used was the most obnoxious and craziest. I've flown for 30 years. I flew out of Amsterdam with, probably 80 different ethnic groups in 65 different languages or more. And I would never say about someone, you or anyone else, he's of Middle Eastern descent. And those words right there were used by almost every phone caller in that same terminology.
Like it was scripted?
Very much so. Mm-hmm. And these are the things I found. That's how I realized that this was scripted, and it wasn't protocol, and it was crazy stuff to say. And I realized then that if we didn't know that the hijackers were Middle Eastern descent, we wouldn't be able to go to those wars now, would we?
I don't think cell phones work on planes up there. 30,000 feet.
They don't.
They absolutely did not.
I'm pretty sure they don't.
They still don't. I just recently flew, and about 1,800 feet I lost cell reception. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine's a private pilot, and he said he turned his phone on at about 5,000 feet, and his phone said, forbidden.
Well, wasn't there also a reported call from Barbara Olson to her husband?
Yes, on Flight 77, there were, again, 2 people that called, and it was one flight attendant, Renee May, who called her mom and dad, and Barbara Olson, who was married to the Solicitor General, Department of Justice, Ted Olson. And she was a CNN commentator. And she's the only person that reported their weapon was a box cutter. And so it's interesting, that story. That's kind of a side story that, it's really kind of fascinating, because Ted Olson first said she called in collect from a cell phone. Well, that's impossible.
No.
And then he said, no, she called from an airphone. Well, I've had people from American Airlines tell me that, of course, they knew better, because their 757s had all of their onboard airphones decommissioned by January 31st, 2001. So we know she didn't call from an airphone. She had to have called from her cell phone on the ground. 2001, I remember standing in a 757 back galley with a bunch of flight attendants. We all had different carriers, AT&T, Mobile, T-Mobile. Do you have any bars? Do you have any reception? The aircraft itself is somewhat of a Faraday cage because of the wiring and the metal, the aluminum.
I'll give you the fact that everything involved in that tragedy that day was very strange. Everything, including the reaction of President Bush when he was with the little kids in Florida. Buildings like that just don't collapse and fall. If there was controlled demolition, and I've talked to a lot of experts about it, Richard Gage, Dr. Judy Wood, if it was controlled demolition, they would have had to have put things in that building weeks before this happened. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I'm sure that. My main thing was the airplanes, and how they did that. But I still got into that part of it, too. And I'm pretty sure they used multiple methods for the towers especially. It would have taken some time, but I know that bomb-sniffing dogs were removed a week or two before. Yep. There was a power down the weekend before. And so there was a lot of really suspicious things going on. Yep. And a lot of interesting people connected to the security at that building.
So what you're concluding, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I will, there's a rogue element of government, and that they are totally out of control.
Out of control.
That would be correct. There was a journalist, an investigative journalist by the name of Danny Casolaro. Danny Casolaro was on the trail of the octopus, and he was following, and I found all these people too, the Iran-Contra, drugs for arms, the Pan Am 103, heroin, and even back to the Kennedy assassination. And everyone that I've found connected to 9/11 somehow connects back to one or all of those events as well. The octopus, I refer to it in the book, is like the shadow government. The company that I was telling you was in the FAA headquarters for 2 years, manipulating radar. MITRE, it's called MITRE, and it is basically the shadow government. I'm old enough to remember when Kennedy was assassinated, and I remember hearing this military-industrial complex took him out, assassinated him, and I never did figure out who that was until I did this research, and it's very much so the same people involved. And the fact that it's okay for us as a nation and our FBI and our government officials, it's okay for us to claim that 19 Arabs did this when they in fact didn't, and then we can go bomb all the other countries that weren't even involved in it over this, and we're doing this all on the illusion that 9/11 was. And it's very sad to see that what has come out of this. And we have literally killed millions of people on an illusion. And it's to keep the military-industrial complex alive. There are rogue elements inside and outside of our government that can do things without any government responsibility. I even found 2 women involved, not man Arab hijackers. I found 2 women perpetrators or handlers in this in an FBI document.
Well, there's no doubt about that. We've seen what they tried to do with false weapons of mass destruction with Iraq. And as soon as we left, everything fell apart because once again, we screwed up everything we touched. We seemed to meddle with a drastic foreign policy. Somehow between World War II, where we were brilliant, and what happened afterwards with Vietnam and everything else, everything fell apart. You know, people, we really don't want to think that there are factions within countries that could do things like this.
Well, my world fell apart when I discovered it, so yes, I agree with you.
And it all goes back to the Kennedy assassination. You know, after 1963, they figured that they can get away with anything they wanted. We need something to get the Americans just all upset. So they create that we were attacked. And in we go, and we saw that disaster. So, you know, on and on and on. The situation again with Saddam Hussein, who was not a Boy Scout, but we set him up. And look what's happened now. So, of everything you've uncovered, what do you find to be the most disturbing aspect of all of this?
Well, you know, once you get over...
Okay, we need you to get these arms before they're out of reach. Take our technical aqua and bring down the transport helos. Then it's a salvage job.
Here's something that happened to me after one of the first interviews I did. Now, where I knew that this place had to have at least a 10,000-foot runway to bring these aircraft, and all the phone calls and the flight times all work to this one location. And during a interview, I don't usually tell that where that is, because I want people to read the book for all the other reasons.
And I want to tell people, just to protect you, we're doing this interview with you. You're not home. You're at another location.
I am, actually,
It's important for people to understand that.
What happened is I found this reserve base, and it was a C-5 transport base, just well within 20 minutes from Boston. It has 11,595-foot runway, plenty long enough to land that 67 heavy with fuel. After an interview I did, I had someone contact me that was in a reserve unit based there. And this woman was absolutely freaked out. She told me exactly where the base was, the name of it. She was based there, and the reserves went active that morning. On 9/11, they activated her unit. She said when they got to the base...
Before or after things happened?
After things started happening that morning.
Well, that's not unusual.
But here's what's unusual. When they got to the base, it had been evacuated of all personnel, and they were locked out and sent to hotels for 2 to 3 days. And she didn't know because those 4 aircraft were there. And this particular place has large hangars large enough for a C-5 transport. You know how big they are? Bigger than a 747.
Yeah, they're huge.
So easily they could have pulled these things in there. Also, I even hate to say this, but it's necessary.
Like that, they got to keep going.
The future plan is not a pretty picture. We need to wake people up, and we need to get them prepared.
I think that motherfucking
Now, where are the planes today?
Did happen.
That is a great question, and you know, it's
did happen.
I found another interesting character involved in all of this.
The Holocaust.
You'll remember
that shit.
Slavery
is happening now, but the Holocaust, that shit is about to happen again.
There's always one.
He has announced that on television the day
See y'all
before 9/11.
motherfuckers that was on y'all porch when y'all was watching the civil rights movement and they were getting dogs sick on the black people.
That made the flight termination system.
The motherfucking roof that came on the roof, people.
Our drones around the world still to this day. He also had a subsidiary company. That company is called STC, that makes the flight termination system that was sold to Boeing to remotely take over the aircraft. He also had a subsidiary company called Tridata. Tridata came in and did a lot of the construction after the 93 bombing of the World Trade Towers. So they had actually the blueprints to the tower. He also was involved with a consortium, a group of people that did something else, and this will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. They refurbished commercial 767s and turned them into military refueling tankers and sold them to militaries around the world.
Well, and those planes were going so fast, if you blink, you're going to miss it.
1 minute before impact, the flight attendant that was on the phone, Amy Sweeney, was asked by her supervisor, can you tell where you are? She'd been flying 13 years, and anybody that's ever flown in and out of LaGuardia, Newark, or JFK knows where you are. When you look out the window and you're over New York, you know where you're at, you're over New York. And she said, I see buildings, I see water, oh no, crash, boom. And any flight attendant that's been flying more than a month, that's been in the New York once, can look out the window and say we're over New York. And so I found that really odd as well. Plus, again, there is no sound of jets in those phone calls. And that was another thing that almost everybody on the receiving end of all those phone calls said. It was dead quiet.
All right, I want to read something that Mark Bernbach, who was a Fox reporter in New York at the time, said. It said, it definitely didn't look like a commercial plane. I didn't see any windows on the side. Again, it was not a normal flight that I've ever seen at an airport. It had a blue logo on the front, and it did not look like it belonged in the air.
Including some police and fire boats that it flew right over. They claimed it was military jets.
Good observation. Good observation. What is your biggest conclusion about all of this?
I guess, simply put, it was a very, very well thought out, methodical illusion, a false flag, an inside job. Later on, found out in my research that on August 6th, Condoleezza Rice and George Bush were passing around some sort of document, and they knew that this was going to happen. If they would have wanted to stop it, George, do you know all the FAA had to do was send out one directive to the pilots and flight attendants of this country, and we would never have let them on board. But now we're finding out that they might not have even been on board, because 10 of them are still alive.
Some members of the 9/11 Commission don't think it did a thorough job. Something hit those buildings, and those buildings came down for some reason. Rebecca, you want to react to any of that?
Well, I did a little research into those buildings. The buildings were supposedly hit by 767s. They're similar in length, a little bit wider in the fuselage. I believe that they were actually designed to take more than one. But let me just say this, over 30 years, I have seen large hail in the Midwest. You know, you can get hail up to the size of a softball. What I saw was large hail pieces come down and absolutely destroy an aluminum aircraft. They're very fragile, and bird strikes as well. And remember what we just saw in LaGuardia when Delta Airlines went and slid off the runway. They went into a wrought iron fence and ripped one of the wings completely off. The other one was cut in half, and the fuselage was ripped all along the bottom. That's just going about maybe 40 or 50 miles an hour at the most into a wrought iron fence. That's what happens to an aluminum airplane, and that's why airline pilots and professionals keep asking me, how did they make that happen? The maximum speed on a 767 is a little over 500 miles an hour at 35,000 feet. At 700 feet or 1,000 feet where they were when they hit the buildings, there is no way that they could structurally travel that fast that the government is claiming they're going. So they couldn't have gone as fast as a missile.
So do we win in the long run, Rebecca? Do we beat these people?
Yeah,
You know, I think the best thing we can do for this type of darkness and evil is to shed this light on it that we're doing right now.
Yeah, we beat him.
Dov Zakheim, the comptroller of the U.S. Pentagon, he also had a subsidiary company of his corporation SPC called Tridata. Tridata actually had all the blueprints, so if anybody wanted to set
Package received. The team are
whoever
going to work.
owns the blueprints would have the easiest time.
No
Middle Eastern descent or Arabs living in a cave in Afghanistan would have had the blueprints, but his company did, which to me makes a whole lot more sense than trying to blame it on someone in a foreign country. And putting all of that together, it would be a lot easier. And by the way, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth cannot to this day get the blueprints for those buildings, and they've been gone for 14 years.
What about the gold? The gold that apparently was in those buildings. Where'd it go?
That's a great question. And, you know, I cover that a little bit in the book about the stolen gold, because there were not just gold, there were gold bonds called Brady bonds, $240 billion worth. Some of it was physical gold that needed to be kind of laundered back into a very heavily monitored gold market. And so that's one of the reasons they claim that the SEC was shut down for 2 weeks. It took that long to funnel away this gold, and that was something that George H.W. Bush Sr. was a part of.
We've never been the same since, Rebecca.
Well, that's true, and we just need to stop this next thing, and we need to be aware that the powers that be, that this military-industrial complex octopus monster, they have plans for us that aren't good, so we need to shed the light on it and wake up people. And that's why I wrote the book, to help people understand that I know it's much easier to stay in your fantasy world and think that you're safe and the government's keeping you safe. It's very hard to swallow. Trust me, I got sick when I found it.
Rebecca, thanks. The name of the book, of course, Methodical Illusion.
Sorry.
It was a military plane. And the plane wasn't no airline or anything. It was a twin-engine, big, great plane.
Morse Mutual, we're here to help. I can do that.
Right in front of our eyes. It was so surreal, like a movie scene. Were you close enough to be able to see any markings on the airplane?
MMI, we expect the unexpected. I'll look into it.
First, then a plane hit the building. Then another plane hit the other building. But when I was coming through the doors on the other side of the Trade Center, something, either they blew the lobby up or something, because it blew glass out of the doors and knocked us all down.
You're in the building trying to help people, and it exploded on the inside of the building. I don't think you get any closer.
It wasn't footage yet. No way. Understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings can blow up. This ain't done yet. The fire with the symbols here, the police officers up there.
Tom Sullivan. I work for Controlled Demolition Incorporated, CDI, the top-rated explosive demolition firm in the world, owned by the Loazo family in early years surrounding 9/11. And I worked for them as an explosives loader for 2.5 years. As an explosives loader, my job was to place explosives in the buildings and prepare them for demolition. There are many steps that you need to take. First up, you have to weaken the building. To weaken the building, that means the staircase, all the staircases have to be cut at intervals. The firewalls have to be removed. The elevator shafts have to be cut.
I looked down to my right, and the elevators exploded, some kind of like a Bruce Willis dive. People just come running out of the lobby, out of the elevators, on fire, fireball. I mean, it was like, what is going on here? There's something's up here. I mean, the plane's up there, now there's flying down here.
Then you have to move to the support columns on the particular load floors. And those are cut by a torch for two reasons. First, to weaken them, and also to allow for charges to be placed onto the structure, or onto the columns themselves. And that essentially reduces their strength by about 20%. And even with all of that work being done to weaken this building, it still remains safely standing, so we can continue to work in it. The story that just a few columns can cause a synchronized global collapse, an implosion, well, that's just nonsense. I don't see how this could actually happen in real life. When we load a building, we have to have all the support columns on a given load floor fail at the same time, within milliseconds of one another. And therefore, the entire building comes down in a synchronized implosion. So I think this notion of a one column failure causing an entire building to implode in a synchronized fashion is just nonsense. Looking at the building, it wouldn't be a problem once you gained access to the elevator shaft.
How about an elevator modernization, which we know was going on the 9 months prior to 9/11? Yes, Elevator World, March 2001, documents it. In fact, they were in the middle of this modernization. There are people who noted that the elevators were locked in turn and that there were guards placed at these locked elevators during the modernization. Of course, you would have to have access to security. Securicom was brought in. Who sits on the board of Securicom? Marvin Bush, the younger brother of George Bush.
Then a team of loading experts would have access to all the core columns and beams. The rest could be accomplished at that point by just the right kind of explosives for the job at hand. The choices are many out there. You wouldn't need miles and miles of dead cord. You could have used wireless remote detonators, and they've been available for years. You need to only look at an action movie to see them in use, and of course the military has them as well.
You want to call your mother?
Contractors don't use them on the other hand because it's just too expensive. Well, you wouldn't have found steel casings to be left in the building. It hasn't been used for years. What we use now is RDX copper-jacketed shape charges, and when they're initiated, there's nothing left of those charges. And in the case of thermite, well, thermite's self-consuming cutting charges have been around since they were first patented in 1984. So there would be nothing left in the debris pile except some residue of molten iron.
Molten steel running down the line, like you're in a fountain.
These incredibly hot areas were found at the bottoms of the elevator shafts, down 7 basement levels. The molten steel was found 3, 4, and 5 weeks later when the rubble was being removed. He said that molten steel was also found at World Trade Center 7. The highest temperature was in the east corner of the South Tower. It was more than double that temperature.
With any implosion, you don't hear one massive boom sound. What you do hear is smaller explosions going off. Mr. Sunder of NIST has said that if this had been a controlled demolition, you would have heard a large, massive bomb going off.
The World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers up behind.
What in reality happens with the controlled demolition is you hear of successive, progressive, smaller waves of smaller explosions going off. In the case of thermite cutting charges, you would have heard far less noise, since they are worked by thermal heating, melting of the steel, rather than an explosive cutting as in RDX charges. I knew from day one that this was a controlled event, and why I did that is because simply looking at Building 7, you have a sudden collapse of the building. It's fairly symmetrical as it comes down. There's the classic kink, which means that the center core fails first. You can see that on the video. And the building falls near free fall.
And the motherfucker said pull the motherfucker. The motherfucker actually said pull the fucking building on the fucking TV. And that bitch got all that motherfucking money from the insurance company for blowing up its own fucking shit. And if we was to lay up there and just burn up our own motherfucking car and was to find out, and this insurance company was to find out we did it, we would go to fucking jail for that little piece of fucking car.
This material is not normal thermite. That's the other thing that really needs to be understood. Anybody could make normal thermite. You can get the ingredients, you can mix them together, you can make them. Any kid could basically do it if they knew the recipe. This material is composed of the real key ingredient that I don't think anybody else could really make in a convenient way is the nano aluminum. It's a controlled substance. I could go buy it, but the government wouldn't sizes and to keep them around.
That's why y'all kids shouldn't be on this game.
Get at the local 5 and dime, or you're going to make on your own. It's very, very difficult to make material. And that's the one thing in there that really tells me specifically that this wasn't some guys working in caves in Afghanistan, or it wasn't, somebody in the basement doing this. This is, a massive engineering operation that made these materials. So the military uses it for a number of different applications. Another one, if you do a search on Google for thermite and building demolition, you can find all sorts of wonderful devices that have been fabricated and invented that use thermite for building demolition. An example would be that in 1984 there was a patent issued for thermite cutter charges to be used in building demolitions that could shoot molten iron through the structure of steel in milliseconds.
Our government killed all our fucking people. I told y'all think September 11 wasn't a motherfucking hoax? We living in slavery right now, and the Holocaust already happened. It's about to happen again.
You can imagine when you assemble these chemicals on a large scale, the amount of heat that you generate.
I want to know how the police, how can y'all be a part of this bullshit? How can the state officials be a part of this bullshit? This is some fucking bullshit.
Hating history sets a new standard for cynicism, or for being out of touch, or both. A New York Times editorial suggests the choice was to contain investigation of the White House long post. But Kissinger is an expert on the date September 11th. It was on that day in 1973 that the CIA-assisted overthrow of the democratically elected government of Chile takes place, masterminded by Kissinger for Richard Nixon. President Salvador Allende is murdered. After a universal backlash, Kissinger backs off. Bush then names, it's 431 days now, Thomas Kane and Lee Hamilton as co-chairmen. Kane's Azerbaijan oil connections and other conflicts of interest should make him ineligible from the outset. He earlier co-chairs the Homeland Security Project. Observers have noticed that huge profits are being made in the surveillance and security industry these days. The White House chooses all the commissioners. Lynn calls them key insiders rife with conflicts of interest. The White House brazenly appoints as the executive director one Dr. Philip Zelikow, a right-wing Republican cop deeply involved in the Bush circle, a member of the Bush-Cheney transition team, and a National Security Council advisor with Condoleezza Rice under Bush 1. The Bush White House did everything in its power to derail an open inquiry. Then, when faced with its inevitability, the president and his aides sought to limit its scope, its access, and its funding. This commission was about as independent from White House control and manipulation as the abused prisoners at Abu Ghraib were from their jailers. The White House releases only 25% of 11,000 documents requested. It blacks out portions of the released documents, resists requests that the administration officials testify under oath, and tries to rush the commission's deadline. Bush and Cheney meet the commission. But it is behind closed doors. They refuse to testify under oath. No tape recorders are allowed. No transcript is allowed. Bush makes no opening statement, and those taking notes must submit them to security personnel.
My administration will not talk about how we gather intelligence, if we gather intelligence, and what the intelligence says. I will not discuss. We will not discuss.
Man, fuck him. We the fucking people. My bad. We the fucking sheeple. There ain't no people anymore. That's ridiculous what's going on, people. Y'all don't even know the movie script is the fucking Bible.
Well, the simple fact is, Barry, that they didn't know where to go. The reason that they didn't know where to go was because a number of conflicting and overlapping war game exercises were taking place, one of which Northern Vigilance had pulled a significant number of North American fighter aircraft into Canada and Western Alaska and Northern Alaska in a mock Cold War hijack exercise. There was another drilled Vigilant Guardian, which was a hijack exercise, a command post exercise, but it involved the insertion of false radar blips under radar screens in the Northeast Air Defense Sector. There was another exercise, Vigilant Warrior.
They gonna kill us because they know that we know now that they're about some bullshit.
With only 8 available fighter aircraft, and they have to be dispatched in pairs, they were dealing with as many as 22 possible hijacks on the day of 9/11, and they couldn't separate the war game exercises from the actual hijacks.
So somebody had to live there and make that confusing.
Is this real world or exercise?
No, it's not exercise, not a test.
But this was done deliberately, though.
These war game exercises were apparently very well planned by someone who I will show, I believe, was Dick Cheney in the United States government to deliberately confuse FAA, NORAD, and U.S. Air Force fighter response to fulfill a prophecy that another man had once said, let one happen and stop the rest. We do not have a clear explanation for why fighters from Andrews Air Force Base were sent out over the sea first and couldn't turn around because the 9/11 Commission seemed to change all the evidence just arbitrarily right before it issued its final report. So we don't have a clear explanation, but certainly it was all consistent with the motive that said make sure that the fighters don't get to any place in time to stop the 3 critical attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon.
You want to think about scrambling aircraft? Oh, God, I don't know. That's a decision somebody's going to have to make probably in the next 10 minutes.
And then the dude that's supposed to have killed Bin Laden, they end up dying on an airplane. If y'all don't understand what's going on,
You know, it might appear that way, but from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual site of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you can pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around, which would indicate that the entire plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon.
Something started to fire with some explosion at the Pentagon not long after the 2 World Trade Centers.
Do you see anything flying overhead but just before the explosion?
We can't see exactly where the source of the explosion was, but you can hear it very clearly with a loud boom.
Tower 2, the first one. This is all New York now.
Michael, if you can hear me, we just heard another explosion down at the Pentagon building. We just heard another loud explosion down at the Pentagon building just seconds ago.
Another explosion of some sort. Now, it could be a secondary explosion here from something happening, but we just heard a loud pop just as you were coming to me. It seemed to be on the east of here. I can't tell what it is. It might be something that's secondary to this because we had a number of small explosions after the fire occurred.
We're not talking about something that's entertaining or sensational. We're talking about your government, where you live, your country, your freedom. And what we're talking about here is things that you see every day, like someone said a long time ago, many will look at.
Mr. President, Howard Dean recently seemed to muse aloud whether you had advanced knowledge of 9/11. Do you agree or disagree with the RNC that this kind of rhetoric borders on political hate speech?
Yeah. Look, there's time for politics. And, it's time for politics, and,
What with their eyes but not see, and listen with their ears but not hear. And that's us. That is this country. We have been looking at things all along and never realizing the significance of the occult emblems that we're seeing today.
We're talking about a global government that's in existence right now. We're not talking about a nation that is going, we're talking about a nation that is gone. We do not control the government of the United States of America. The United States of America is controlled by this evil army. They control the money system, they control the State Department, they control the president.
The seal that we have on an American dollar bill is an occult seal of an occult society pursuing an occult agenda.
That's our sign, man. The brown people. They didn't do nothing against us.
One man who saw the destruction of 9/11 firsthand is speaking out about the case against Moussaoui tonight. Lloyd England was driving his taxi cab next to the Pentagon when Flight 77 flew over him and crashed into the building. Tony Dorsey spoke tonight and joins us from Arlington with more. Tony?
That's right, Doreen. Lloyd England wasn't just a witness, he was also a survivor. He very nearly died on one of the roads behind me, leading to the Pentagon. Lloyd England doesn't know why he was spared on September 11th, and he also has a question for the only person convicted of taking part in the terrorist attacks.
It's good I feel like shit. Not feeling as good as really creating all creation to be. I got you. Because you changed by it the way that they changed by the way they were taught to.
The plane was so low and hit the pole.
Oh yeah, I break it down.
When it hit the pole, it knocked the light part off.
I always feel good even though I feel bad.
The light pole shaft speared its way through England's cab, pushing the passenger side of his seat backwards into the rear of the car. A few feet to the right, and England would have been crushed.
I had to wrestle with the car to stop it.
When
I did stop the car, there was no more.
The jet's thunderous engines had been silenced by a fiery crash.
And I said, your dad on the real break, you can go home. He go home.
Witnesses independently and unanimously confirmed
I got him to go buy me another pipe so I can puff on the roaches that I had.
All of these witnesses have worked in the area for many years and are extremely familiar with the topography and landmarks.
When I
Some
gave
have
you,
been officially
but I'm gonna give you
documented
this,
reporting
and I
the
got
same
one.
thing only weeks
I
after
got
the
one
event,
rail,
and others are aviation professionals and police officers who are therefore expert witnesses. Absolutely none of the independent witnesses willing to go on record have supported a self-sabotage.
I ain't want to leave it in my locker or nothing. I wanted it on me, because, you know,
you ready to do whatever you're going to do with it.
No, I got a Rello I'm going to give to you.
Yeah, I rolled it up. Yeah, I rolled it up.
And I know you don't like that flavor, because I'm just not testing it. Well, I'm not just testing it, but I just grabbed me one today.
What, a roll?
Yeah.
As unanimously demonstrated by the witnesses,
and it's fresh
nowhere near the $5
and
pole.
soft.
But it was furthest from light pole number 1, which is what cab driver Lloyd England claims he lifted out of the windshield of his cab minutes after the attack.
Yeah, it's my color,
The specifications of the
might cost you much though, but it's my color.
I mean, it's a higher quality.
Yeah, but you get two for that.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I'd rather buy them than them fives and all that stuff in one, because I don't like that.
Because like I said, I don't want to live there and fuck with that high.
Inside the cab.
But it is what it is.
Not a single witness exists who says they saw the pole.
I'm about to run to the store, so whatever he was doing.
Yeah, I'm back here.
They all say the plane was nowhere near the light pole.
I was just transferring and
Yet Lloyd
take my
claims he
bag
was
off.
stopped sideways on the road.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll be back.
All righty then.
With the over 30-foot long light pole still sticking out over the hood. And that a silent stranger helped him remove the pole from the car.
A car was coming, well, I guess he called it more or less a van, and I asked the guy, would he help me get the pole out? So he stopped, he never said a word. I said, man, it's mighty quiet, it's so quiet. And he never said a word. He helped me get the pole out. The pole would happen to be bent when we pulled the pole out, and the pole was bent, and the bent part took me down to the ground. I fell down on my back, but I held the pole up and laid the pole down, and he got in his van and went on down the road.
This would mean that a 90-ton Boeing traveling 530 miles per hour factored with the kinetic energy of the cab traveling about 40 miles per hour in the opposite direction. Would surely cause at least some damage to the hood of his car.
And to clarify, it was the large piece of the base.
It's the large piece that was sticking out across the hood. The pole came right on through to the back seat. If anybody had been sitting in the back, sitting in the front on the right side, the pole would have went through them.
And it actually was laying on your hood then?
Yeah, but there's no scratches on the hood.
The sheer weight and length of the pole, in context with the physics of the scenario described by Lloyd, when compared with the total lack of damage to the hood of the cab, reveals a situation that is beyond implausible. But don't forget, the witnesses proved the plane was nowhere near the bridge, or the cab, explaining why this scene is so questionable and beyond physically implausible. Lloyd was confronted with this information in June of 2008 and had a very odd reaction. Before the on-camera interview began, learning where he was being audio recorded, Lloyd let it slip that he knew his cab and the light pole were on the bridge.
He took pictures of the event?
Oh, the pole, right. Right.
So what's up? That's the big question, Lloyd. I mean, you said the government never did anything, never investigated your cab or took it in for evidence, right?
No, they did not. I was interviewed by the FBI once they knew I was still alive because my wife works for them.
She works for the FBI?
Yeah, and she said that they were saying that they had a problem trying to locate me. She said, well, I see him every day.
Here's what's going on, Lloyd. We talked to dozens of people, like I said.
No problem.
Most of them saw the plane for a big long time. All these guys, they're Arlington Cemetery right here in the maintenance building.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to all the people who are at the signal station right here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your car on the road, on the side of the road, in this picture, was right here.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, we got pictures of it. Here it is.
My car is not there.
No, we got pictures.
No, my car was not there.
I can pull it up. I'll show
I
you.
don't care what you do. My car was at the Pentagon. My car was not across this bridge.
It was on this bridge. I'll show
No,
you the
no,
picture.
no, it wasn't. My car was back here. It was not down here. This one was right here. That's where I was driving. I came up off of, I'm coming from Roslyn. And coming from Roslyn, what we call H Road.
So where do you say the car was here?
The car was back here.
Okay. It says, we know that the poles are down here. So you're saying the car was like up here.
That's right.
After a road trip to go physically examine Lloyd's cab from 9/11 that he had preserved under a tarp 90 miles away on his other property in the country, we were able to show him the images proving his scene with the cab and the pole was just south of the bridge.
This picture right here, here you are, you see? The car is kind of surrounded by these guys. There's the pole right here. Now see what this is? That's the cobblestone from the bridge. Now take a look at this. Come over here. Here's the bridge right here. Now there's your cab. It's sideways on the side of the road. With the hole in it, the pole's laying down right over there. The pole used to be up right here. This is pole number 1. Well, you're right on the bridge.
No.
That's your cab, right? Look close. See that?
That's the little way.
No, it's facing the same way. Facing the same way it was right here. This is taken from the other side. This way it's facing. Look at that one.
I've never seen that picture there before.
You never saw it? This is Jason Ingersoll. He was a Navy military photographer. Here's your cab, right?
That's not.
See your cab? See it? There's the grill. See you right here. You're wearing the cap.
Yeah, I see it.
All right. Now there's the pole. That's your pole. See the bend?
Yeah.
That's the pole you pulled out, right? There's your cab. Now, you couldn't be any other pole. The lamp is down next to it. But see how it's got the cobblestone?
I see the sign.
That's the sign. And that's the cobblestone.
That's not...
from the bridge.
I see that from the bridge, but that's not where it happened.
Well, it's not where it happened. Well, how did they get there then?
I can't explain that. I've never seen that before.
You never saw?
I've never seen that. The bridge, where the train went across and where the pole came in, there was no bridge. You took it to the pole, you took it to the car, it was up on the bridge.
But that's the bridge.
That is a bridge, but that's not the bridge.
Well, there's only one bridge in the area.
I know, but that's not where I was.
There's the cab, right? That's the bridge. Here's the signs.
That's not where it happened.
What? So what about this image? Are you suggesting, well, is this your cab?
The only thing I can say is where it happened is not on the bridge.
And this is what I'm not getting. You're saying, like right here, you can see your cab, right?
I see it here.
Well, you see how it's got the hole in there. It's the same cab we just went to go see on your property.
Okay.
And this is from 9/11. You see it smoking still. And there's the bridge. This is the south of the bridge. That's the sign right there.
Well, that's smoke shine.
I don't even care about that. All I know is you're to the south of the bridge.
But I'm not.
Lloyd continued to refuse to admit that the photographs prove he was located on the bridge. But he already let it slip minutes before the earlier interview started that he knew his neighbor took pictures of his cab and the light pole on the bridge. This proves that Lloyd was deliberately changing his position on the highway for the interview to match up with where all the witnesses saw the plane. We later that night went with Lloyd to obtain the independent photographs from his neighbor. Immediately after obtaining the images, we drove to the scene of the crime.
I did not come around that way. Not down to this bridge. And he was up on the bridge.
Even the picture your friend Mike just showed us.
I can see it.
You see that, right?
I can see
How can that be?
I'm not telling you what happened.
You're telling us something that's completely different from the picture. Okay, we're on the north side again. You're saying, where were you?
I'm saying that
you weren't even...
Where these signs are right here.
Were these signs right here?
Right here. These signs right here where I was at.
Before that?
North, this is where the picture was No,
they weren't. There's no cobblestone there.
I'm telling you that that's where I was.
There's no cobblestone.
That's where I was.
This is the signs that you see in the images.
I understand that, but that's where I was.
These are the images. The VDOT pole, the VDOT camera pole, all that. And cobblestone, look at the cobblestone bridge. That's you. You're standing right next to it. See that?
I have no problem with that. I was not down.
See the cobblestone?
I was not here.
That's where you were.
I was not here.
Lloyd was much more candid when he didn't realize he was being recorded.
You know what this story is? That's what I said. You gotta understand what you're saying. That's the truth. It's his story. It has nothing to do with the truth. It's his story. It's too big for me, man. It's a big thing. I mean, you know, this is a world thing happening. I'm a small man. You know? Right. My lifestyle is completely different from this.
Right.
I'm not supposed to be involved in this. This is for other people who have money and all this kind of stuff.
You just said, wait, what do you mean?
Well, I'm not supposed to be involved in this. I don't have nothing.
So your point that these people that have all the money,
this is their thing.
This is their event.
This is for them.
Meaning they're doing it for their own reasons.
That's right. I'm not supposed to do it.
But they used you, right?
I'm in it.
You're in it.
Yeah, we came across the highway together.
You and their event.
That's right.
But they must have planned that.
It was planned. One thing about it, you gotta understand something. When people do things and get away with it, you, the vicious in terms of me. And when it comes to me, it's gonna be so big I can't do nothing about it. And when it comes to me, it's gonna be so big I can't do nothing about it. So it has to be stopped in the beginning when it's small. Keep it from scratch.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Lloyd, in essence, admitted his involvement in the 9/11 black operation, but he was cautious not to outright confess. He worked hard to distance himself from the planners, while admitting it was planned. Regardless of Lloyd's true level of involvement, the independent evidence for a north side approach proves the cab and light pole scene staged, and that the plane did not hit the Pentagon. For a thorough analysis of the NTSB-released alleged flight data recorder exposing fatal anomalies, please see pilotsfor911truth.org. For more North Side Approach witnesses and a comprehensive strategy as to how you can take action on this important information, please visit citizeninvestigationteam.com. What you have just witnessed is conclusive evidence proving that the 9/11 attack on the Pentagon was a carefully planned and skillfully executed military deception. As shown, the evidence proves the plane actually flew directly over the Navy Annex and north of the former Citgo gas station, and therefore did not hit the light poles or the building. If you still do not understand why the North Side approach proves the plane did not hit the building, please watch this video again and study the images. Again, a plane on this flight path cannot hit the light poles, show up low and level across the lawn as seen in the dubious surveillance video, and cause the directional external and internal damage leading to the curiously round C-ring hole outlined in the ASCE Building Performance Report. It is important to understand that, contrary to popular belief, the Pentagon is not located in the restricted airspace in Washington, D.C., but across the Potomac River in Arlington, Virginia. It is also about 1 mile from Reagan National Airport, so low-flying commercial jets are approaching and departing in the airspace over and near the building every few minutes, all day, every day. A plane making a steep ascent over the Potomac River is a very common sight. Additionally, fraudulent media reports of a second plane that allegedly shadowed the attack jet and veered away at the last moment were disseminated within the first few days of the attack. While there was a C-130 cargo plane that flew into the scene about 3 minutes after the attack, as confirmed by photographs, video, Many eyewitnesses, and the pilot himself, Lieutenant Colonel Steve O'Brien. Select media sources falsely reported accounts of this plane, implying and outright stating that it was in the airspace at the same time as the attack. By doing this, the story of a very real second plane seen in the skies minutes later was morphed with the attack in order to later serve as confusion and provide a plausible explanation for the genuine witnesses who really saw the attack jet flying away during the explosion, and not a second plane. This is likely one of the reasons they had the attack jet fly on the north side in the first place. It assured that people who saw the plane flying away just after the fireball could be confidently told that they must have seen a second plane, while simply missing AA-77 hitting the building from the south side. It's now clear that this worked wonders, as Pentagon police officer Roosevelt Roberts Jr. convinced himself that the plane he saw at about 50 feet altitude, flying away immediately after the explosion, was another plane. Also worth noting is that light pole number 1 was the only pole that needed to be staged real-time in the street. The other 4 poles were left lying in the grass, unnoticeable to passing motorists. These poles were more than likely placed the night before. Heliport Tower Air Traffic Controller Sean Boger confirmed that President George W. Bush had conveniently departed from the heliport on September 10th and was scheduled to fly back to the heliport on September 11th around 12 noon, and that Secret Service had been combing the area as usual. So operatives under the cover of Secret Service or Special Security conducting routine presidential security operations had the necessary cover to do whatever they needed to do in preparation for the event. When the interviews shown in this presentation were conducted, none of these witnesses were even remotely aware that their accounts contradicted the official flight path and proved that the plane did not hit the building. They were only willing to talk because they were successfully deceived and assumed that the plane must have hit the building. Despite each having a perfect view of the plane as it passed by them at treetop level, most of them were not able to see the alleged impact point, or in some cases any part of the Pentagon at all. Many described how they were ducking and running for cover before the plane reached the building.
Nobody was really trying to look to see if it actually was going to hit the building or not hit the building. So everybody
reticent to further discuss their experiences. However, Officer Brooks said our findings were a, quote, eye-opener, and that anything is possible when it comes to him being fooled that day. Officer Legacy admitted that he flinched when he saw the jet, and then jumped into his police cruiser, grabbing his radio.
The first thing I did was I kind of flinched, and ducked into my car. And at the time, I mean, I don't know if it was a reaction, like a fear or whatever, but I ended up in my car.
He admitted that he did not see what the plane actually did as it reached the building because of the fireball.
Did I see what the plane did? No. There's a big fire.
Their oath in a court of law. Meanwhile, their superiors have restricted them from speaking about their experience on 9/11 to the media any longer. Officer Roosevelt Roberts, who saw the plane flying away from the building after the explosion, was also unaware of the implications until speaking with us. Like many of the other witnesses, he is no longer willing to speak about his experience on 9/11. The fact remains that all of these witnesses can be subpoenaed for a grand jury or congressional hearing as a means to sort out who to indict as responsible for this event. So this is what we are calling for. It is now your responsibility to get involved, just as we had a responsibility to get this information into your hands.
We do.
This deception has been used as a pretext for the invasion and occupation of numerous sovereign nations, leaving thousands of U.S. troops and hundreds of thousands of civilians dead and the lives of millions more destroyed. It has been and is still being used to justify torture, secret arrests, warrantless wiretapping, the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, the Real ID Act, and a whole host of other authoritarian programs which undermine the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights.
As soon as it's over with, y'all gonna hear exactly how a person that can't read or write use technology to help y'all get the fucking truth in your fucking life because you've been lied to since day motherfucking one. Your mama had to live and give you her birthday because that was your consolation prize. You wasn't born to her or you. You was born to the United States of America
inaction by any
as
media,
fucking
political,
product.
or authority figures who have viewed this
You're
information
on the stock
amounts
market.
to a crime
Look on your
of
birth
obstruction of
certificate card.
justice.
The numbers
Just
on the
as
back of your birth
importantly,
certificate card in
inaction
the
by
red
any
with a
of us
letter next
is
to
a
it
grave injustice upon our
is
children
you
and
on the
grandchildren
stock market
who will suffer
being
the most
traded
in a world
as
that is being
goods.
created under the fear-mongering false banner
When
of
you
fighting
die,
terrorism.
somebody prosper from you
We're calling
dying.
on all
They
concerned
cash
persons to
out
join us
off
in
of
a
you
nonviolent
dying
campaign
from
to
them
force
having you
accountability
on the stock
while
market
demanding an immediate
with
and
that
indefinite
number on the back of your
moratorium to
social
all
security
military
number, your
action,
social security
defense
card.
spending, and unconstitutional
up.
programs which emanate from the 9/11 deception.
From my close-up inspection, and there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual site of the building was crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you can pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around, which would indicate that the entire plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon and then caused the side to collapse. Now, even though if you look at the pictures of the Pentagon, you see that the floors have all collapsed. That didn't happen immediately. It wasn't until almost about 45 minutes later that the structure was weakened enough that all of the floors collapsed.
I'm laying there and giving this to my little viewers today. They done came out with how we can get involved in holding Bush and all the rest of these bitches accountable for September 11th. And those kids do what I see where people thumb down stuff. Now, only way I can see somebody thumbing this down, D, is if they the one that is a part of it. Right or wrong? When people thumb down stuff like what happened with September 11th. Yeah, I'm saying these people that's thumbing this shit down, either they stuck on stupid, don't want to be straight, or they're the straight motherfuckers that got us stupid, and the ones that's doing that shit. Shit, motherfuckers. Boy. I'm checking out, it's all new shit they're putting out there, but D.
You're listening to the Corbett Report.
We already know, D. All they can save our ass now is us putting out the loving vibration that will overveil their bullshit. But these motherfuckers got deep. They deep in us, D. When I say they deep in us, every time I think about everybody that died since they changed the Social Security cards, put the Social cards in, them bitches got paid. Ooh. We ain't talking no little bit of money, nigga. We talking about numbers that you can't even fabricate. Ooh. Not to make your head blow off, people, but you just gotta stay up on this shit. Let's go. More truth. Every time you sit there, you think about this, people. I want you to really think about this. We've been false flagged. Every war we've been in, it's been a false flag. It's been our government creating the shit. And y'all don't get it yet?
Terrorist. September the 11th.
Al-Qaeda, 9/11 hijackers,
Jihadists. Terrorist organizations.
terror attack.
Bin Laden.
September 11th,
Terrorist.
the self-confessed mastermind.
Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda.
Terrible new terrorist organization.
September 11th.
Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them.
Our government are the terrorists. Our law enforcement officers are working with the government terrorists. How you officers not understand, understand that you working for the bad people?
Told about September 11th, 2001. Instead, let's ask ourselves one question. What was 9/11? A terrorist atrocity? An attack on America? The first salvo in a new war? A day that changed everything? The question may seem simple, but how we answer it is of vital importance. It determines how we proceed with our investigation of that day. And once you strip away the emotional rhetoric and the fear-inducing imagery, we're left with the simple truth. 9/11 was a crime. And as with any crime, there is one overriding imperative that detectives must follow to identify the perpetrators. Follow the money. This is an investigation of the 9/11 money trail.
Real talk, baby, on the channel, the truth is the truth, period. Fuck all the bullshit. And we are the descendants of the two first loving people, so we are the bullshit.
In 1998, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey agreed to privatize the World Trade Center, the complex of office towers in Lower Manhattan that they had owned and operated since their construction in 1973. In April 2001, an agreement was reached with a consortium of investors led by Silverstein Properties, and on July 24, 2001, Larry Silverstein, who already owned World Trade Center Building 7, signed a 99-year lease for the Twin Towers and Buildings 4 and 5. The lease was for $3.2 billion and was financed by a bridge loan from GMAC, the commercial mortgage arm of General Motors, as well as $111 million from Lloyd Goldman and Joseph Kerr, individual real estate investors. Silverstein Properties only put down $14 million of its own money. The deal was unusual in a variety of ways.
Y'all kill me, y'all.
Although the Port Authority carried only $1.5 billion of insurance coverage on the WTC complex, which earlier that year had been valued at $1.2 billion, Silverstein had insisted on doubling that amount, insuring the buildings for $3.55 billion. Silverstein's insurance broker struggled to put that much coverage in place and ultimately had to split it among 25 dealers. The negotiations were so involved that only temporary contracts were in place for the insurance at the time the lease was signed, and by September the contracts were still being finalized. Silverstein's group was also explicitly given the right to rebuild the structures if they were destroyed, and even to expand the amount of retail space on the site if rebuilding did take place. Within hours of the destruction of the Twin Towers on September 11th, Silverstein was on the phone to his lawyers, trying to determine if his insurance policies could construe the attacks as two separate insurable incidents rather than one. Silverstein spent years in the courts attempting to win $7.1 billion from his $3.55 billion insurance policy, and in 2007 walked away with $4.55 billion, the largest single insurance settlement ever. As soon as the deal was announced, Silverstein sued United and American Airlines for a further $3.5 billion for their negligence in the 9/11 attacks, a claim that was struck down by the courts but is still on appeal. Perhaps even more outrageously, in a secret deal in 2003, the Port Authority agreed to pay back 80% of their initial equity in the lease, but allowed the Silverstein Group to maintain control of the site. The deal gave Silverstein, Goldman, and Kerr $98 million of the $125 million they put down on the lease, and a further $130 million in insurance proceeds that were earmarked for the site's rebuilding. In the end, Silverstein profited from the 9/11 attacks to the tune of $4.5 billion and counting. But that's the 9/11 insurance heist you saw. There was a much deeper, more complex, and well-hidden heist that was taking place behind closed doors on September 11, 2001, deep in the heart of the World Trade Center itself. Marsh & McLennan is a diversified risk, insurance, and professional services firm with over $13 billion in annual revenue and 57,000 employees. In September of 2001, 2,000 of those employees worked in Marsh's offices in the World Trade Center. Marsh occupied floors 93 to 100 of the North Tower, the exact area of the impact and explosion. In the year prior to 9/11, Marsh had contracted with Silverstream Software to create an electronic connection between Marsh and its clients for the purpose of creating paperless transactions. Silverstream had already built internet-based transactional and trading platforms for Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank, Bankers Trust, Alex Brown, Morgan Stanley, and other financial services firms that were later involved in 9/11, but this new project was unlike anything that had been attempted before. Richard Andrew Grove, the salesperson who handled the Marsh & McLennan project for Silverstream, explains.
In 2000, Silverstream was contracted by Marsh to provide a technological solution beyond what we had done for any of the above-named companies, insofar as it would be used to electronically connect Marsh to its major business partners via internet portals for the purpose of creating paperless transactions and expediting revenue and renewal cycles, and built from the ground up at the client's site. Silverstream provided a specific type of connectivity that was used to link AIG and Marsh & McLennan. the first two commercial companies on the planet to employ this specific type of transaction. And in fact, Marsh was presented with something called the Accord Award, ACORD, in the summer of 2001 for being the first commercial corporation to do so. And what you should take away from that is this. It means that no other companies were doing this type of transaction, so the question in your mind should be, what then were Marsh and AIG doing, and why did they need to leverage technologies that no other commercial entity on the face of the earth needed to conduct business? The contract Silverstream then stationed approximately 30 to 40 developers at Marsh, and this team was led by 2 to 3 managers with whom I liaised to ensure delivery of the solution that was promised. The development team worked regularly into the night, if not all night, and sometimes worked 7 days a week in order to adhere to Marsh's indicated pre-September 11th deadline. Now, while
But it was not long before severe irregularities in the billing of the account for this project led Richard Grove into the heart of a deeper mystery about the software and about the work that he was engaged in.
There's fiscal anomalies with respect to the Marsh.com project when I was in a meeting on the 98th floor in October of 2000 with a gentleman named Gary Lasko. Gary was Marsh's North American Chief Information Officer, and that particular afternoon a colleague and I helped him identify about $10 million in suspicious purchase orders after I had recognized that certain vendors were deceiving Marsh, and specifically appeared to be selling Marsh large quantities of hardware that were not necessary, as this was later confirmed by Gary. In the spring of 2000, I brought my concerns up to executives inside of Silverstream, and I was urged to keep quiet and mind my own business. I went to an executive inside of Marsh. He advised me to do likewise. But then, I mentioned it to a few executives at Marsh who I could trust, like Gary Lasko and Catherine Lee, Ken Rice, an inquiry, made sure that his personnel, who I just mentioned, were in the office bright and early for a global conference call before the staff meeting upon which I was to intrude. A conference call which I was informed this executive in question conducted, but attended from the safety of his Upper West Side apartment. Although
The global conference call with Marsh's IT staff on the morning of 9/11, a meeting that included the staff who were investigating the suspicious billing on the Silverstream deal, was confirmed in a 2006 interview with Marsh's then Chief Information Officer, Ellen Clark. Richard Grove had been asked to attend the meeting, but was stuck in traffic on the way to the towers when the attack began. His friends at Marsh were not so lucky. 294 Marsh employees, including all of the participants in the conference call in the North Tower, died that morning. Meanwhile, the Marsh executive who had scheduled the meeting, the same one who had asked Grove to drop the issue of the billing anomalies, was safe in his apartment, attending the meeting via telephone. So what was the Marsh.com project really about? Why was it so important for it to be finished before September 11th? And what kind of transactions did it enable? More importantly, what information was lost when the data center on the 95th floor of the North Tower suffered a direct hit on 9/11 and the buildings were demolished? A partial answer comes from reports that emerged in late 2001 that a German firm, Convar, had been hired to reconstruct financial data from the hard disks recovered at Ground Zero. The firm talks about this work in its promotional videos.
September the 11th, 2001. The whole world is in shock following the attacks on the World Trade Center. Convar has some solutions to offer. Data stored on countless hard drives retrieved from the collapsed towers was believed to have been lost, but Convar specialists can render irreplaceable information readable again at Europe's only high-security data recovery center. Burnt, crushed, or dirty storage media are ready to relinquish their secrets by the time we finish them.
More details about the work comes from an IDG News Service story posted to CNN.com in December 2001. Under the headline, "Computer disk drives from WTC could yield clues," the article notes, "An unexplained surge in transactions was recorded prior to the attacks, leading to speculation that someone might have profited from previous knowledge of the terrorist plot by moving sums of money. But because the facilities of many financial companies processing the transactions were housed in New York's World Trade Center, destroyed in the blasts, it has, until now, been impossible to verify that suspicion." A Reuters article from the same time, later posted to Convar's website, offers revealing glimpses into the investigation's early results. It quotes Peter Herschel, Convar's director at the time. The suspicions that